Welcome to the Section 111 podcast with your host, TJ Shoemaker.
And welcome to the Section 111 podcast, episode 2. You know, episode 1 was really good. I had my big brother Tyler on there, and I enjoyed the feedback that everybody gave me. So shout out to everybody that reached out to me and let me know what they thought of the podcast. And I went out and got a very special guest for episode 2. I brought in professional strength and conditioning coach Chris Lane. Chris, how's it going?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, no problem, man. I really appreciate you coming on and taking your time out of your busy schedule to join the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's a pleasure to be on Section 111, especially the second episode. So it sounds like it's heating up, ready to go.
For sure. So on episode 1, like I said, I had my brother on there, and I kind of wanted to continue the tradition of having guests that I know that I'm just bigger and stronger than. So, you know, when I was thinking of guests for episode 2, your name kind of came across my mind, and you kind of checked all the boxes. So
I don't know if that's a swipe at your brother or it's a compliment to me, but either way, I'll take it.
No, I'm just playing, man. But if anyone didn't see the promo graphic that I posted on social media, you can get on there and view that, and you can see a picture of Chris on there. And if you guys want to, you can kind of compare him and I and see who you think would win in a bodybuilding contest. But But Chris, no hard feelings if they pick me, all right?
Not a problem, man. I'm not a sore loser.
All right. So before we get started, I want to remind everyone that you can find all Section 111 podcast episodes on YouTube, and it's now available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. So be sure to get on there, rate and review the show, let everyone know what they're getting with the Section 111 podcast, and also subscribe to the show. That way you never miss any past or future episodes. All right. So Chris, can you just kind of shed some light on your background and what all you've got going on at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to keep that in a summary for you. A lot going on. First, starting off with my background. So been working full time in the fitness and wellness industry for the past, going on 11 years. Ever since graduating from Marshall, master's in exercise physiology, focused on kinesiology. So it was really all about timing. As I was a graduate assistant for Marshall Strength and Conditioning. And before the rec center was there, as it was being built, the old fitness center that the students use, which is now, the Marshall Rec Center, was in Gullickson Hall, which is now currently the Olympic Sports Strength and Conditioning Gym, where Marshall men's and women's basketball, volleyball, several other Olympic sports are training. So kind of a cool story is as I started my personal training career in the old fitness center on Gullickson Hall, now currently the Olympic Strength and Conditioning Gym for Marshall Athletics, we moved out of that as a recreation and fitness staff into the current rec center. I want to say that was back in 2009, if I'm remembering my dates correctly. And at the same summer, as we were moving out, as a graduate assistant with Marshall Strength and Conditioning, was moving the Strength and Conditioning Gym from downstairs on the Henderson floor up to the now empty spot, which was the old fitness center. So I was moving out with one group and moving in with another. So I spent a lot of time in this one room, working from one end of the spectrum to the other, from general population, personal training, all the way to, elite athlete, strength and conditioning. So that's kind of how I got my start. So that was kind of an exciting, very busy summer of manual labor and training. So it was blessed to be part of the original opening Marshall Recreation staff. Started off as the personal training coordinator, overseeing all the personal trainers and all the programming that went into that, the staff development, the training, and all the programs and competitions that we ran for our personal trainers and our clients. So that was a really big blessing. Super passionate about personal training and remain passionate still to this day about my personal training and the clientele that I keep. Ultimately, was promoted to the fitness and wellness coordinator, overseeing all of the programs within fitness and wellness at the Marshall Rec Center, which is, largely the heart and soul of that facility. All of the fitness and wellness classes, the group exercise classes, so to speak, the scheduling, staff, the nutritional services, over 60 some employees. I was responsible for overseeing all of them, as well as, allowing me to continue personal training and working with strength and conditioning as well with high-end athletes, Huntington Prep, all those players, which we'll talk about shortly. So it's a really hybrid, awesome position, one part administration and supervisory, another part being on the front line with my staff as a personal trainer, a group X instructor, and a strength and conditioning coach on the fitness floor. So it's a really great environment for me to grow my staff, but also to grow my own skill set across the spectrum, from all things fitness and wellness, nutrition, and lifestyle based. So it really gave me an opportunity to walk the walk and talk the talk at the same time. So was there for 8 years at the Marshall Rec Center, and over the past over 2 years now, am blessed to continue to provide all the same services, but as an independent contractor now, working for myself. Let me take a breath and kind of spit out those things. So best way I can kind of describe it is, I have all these puddles of different companies and equipment and training and administration that I'm involved in. And I'm just kind of enjoying and being blessed, splashing around all these different puddles, from tactical strength and conditioning, working with a company, Brute Force. Headquarters is based out of Denver, Colorado. We train, coach, and program for military special forces, law enforcement, fire, EMS, and first responders. Super awesome family, super awesome company, ULU base, unstable load, odd object. So very deployable and tactical fitness for operators and tacticians, so to speak. So I'm involved heavily with that, both in the administrative and the programming, training, coaching side of things. I maintain about 15 to 20 hours a week with my live personal training clientele. That's involves anywhere from general fitness population all the way up to college, professional, and Olympic athletes currently. So I kind of cap that off at, again, about 15 to 20 hours a week here at my home studio or abroad, either around the nation or throughout the tri-state at different facilities. Super involved in online training, so love all of my online clients if they're listening in. So really appreciate you guys. They kill it using a software called Train Heroic that I custom program and all-inclusive both fitness and nutrition using online and software, providing virtual personal training remotely. Beyond that, wow, that's pretty much a very, very, very full week. Gives me a little bit of the time that I have remaining to spend with my family. My wife Jessica and our son Eli is 12 years old.
Man, that's awesome. You got a lot of stuff going on, and it's good that you can kind of find that balance between your passion and your family. So I can definitely appreciate that.
That's always the struggle, and it's a blessing and a curse. So when you truly love doing what you're doing, I mean, I will always say this, and I hope that I can hold myself to this, is like, if I were a multimillionaire, I would continue to do what I do, for free, because I love it that much. So I'm able to get there and just do it for the love of, right, is the ultimate goal.
Exactly.
But because you love what you do, I mean, I literally eat, live, and breathe, fitness and wellness, the industry and the training and the relationships and the progressions, and kind of basking and thriving in my clients' and athletes' success. Because you love it that much, it is hard to find a balance, because nothing more than my family. It's you gotta find a cutoff line. So whenever you are working as an independent contractor, you don't work a typical 9 to 5 day. You gotta cut it off somewhere. And with the technology of devices and cell phones and computers, you always have access to your clients, and they always kind of have access to you. So you got to cut it off, or draw the line somewhere. So sometimes that line gets very blurry when you're working as a independent contractor, an entrepreneur, and business owner, so on and so forth. Dancing around in these different puddles that you're involved in.
Yeah, definitely. So while we're kind of on that topic, I was kind of browsing your Instagram the other day, and I noticed that you had some pictures of what looks like a facility that's about to come about. Can you just kind of touch on that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So while all that other stuff that I just mentioned is going on in the background, not so much secretly, but it's been a slow roll and been a passion of mine, that I want to make sure everything is done correctly. So we're taking our time on it. My first facility, so home base, 20,000 square feet, called Boombox Fitness, Wellness, and Therapy Facility. Shaping up to open this fall, that I'm proudly to say. But wow, from all things, fitness, personal training, athlete, sports performance, and dynamic group exercise classes to restorative therapy services, all of which are cutting edge and state of the art, especially to this area. And a slew of lifestyle services too. So, stress management, nutrition and meal planning, lifestyle modification, so on and so forth, is one side of the operation. The other side of the operation is our sports complex, two multi-sport, full court basketballs, courts, indoor track, batting cages, and a slew of additions that are in the works, once we get open to continue adding on to that operation. So super excited about it. I'm located in Proctorville, Ohio. So those of you that are local know where Proctorville is, the Proctorville Bridge on the 29th Street end of Huntington. As soon as you cross the river into Ohio, into Proctorville, you're about 3 to 4 minutes away, depending on a red light. So super accessible. Just like, traveling anywhere, you're a good 10 to 15 minutes, from anywhere you are, from here to the Huntington Mall, or from Proctorville to Huntington, from Huntington to Barbersville. So definitely not out of the way, just the road less traveled unless you're from that area. So those of you that are in Huntington, Barbersville, and our surrounding area, definitely super accessible, super easy to find.
I'm gonna have to definitely check that out whenever you get it finished, and see what all you have to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to touch on that a little bit more. So I'm still setting on, releasing all the marketing and all the information about the services and things like that until the time is right. So just continuing to set up the dominoes and ready to execute. So when that time comes here, probably within the next 4 to 6 weeks, you'll see a huge wave of marketing, announcing the opening and the grand opening, all of the services. So the social media at We Are Boombox on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook are both live, and as well as the website. But everything as of right now is coming soon. And, here and there, I like to tease it a little bit as we're under construction, just to give people kind of hints and ideas about what's coming, and keep that buzz and interest going. So, I've had, ever since I left the rec center, I continue to have people approach me, Chris, when are you going to open up your own place? When are you going to open up your own place? So it's got to be, the right time with the right people and the right staff. And so I'm not in a big hurry to rush something that I plan to make so epic and game changing.
Definitely got a lot going on there, and sounds really awesome, man. I'm looking forward to it myself, and I'm sure some of the listeners out there will likely check it out and see what you have to offer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that information, all that information is soon to follow, and we'll definitely have a grand opening, open to the public for everybody to come in and try out, training and therapy services and classes, everything that the facility has to offer, for that grand opening week, just, to get their hands on the equipment and experience things that they've never experienced before. Bottom line is, all this whole facility, and the equipment and the training services that we have to offer, people haven't experienced, or had an opportunity to experience in this area. So for them to get their hands on it and experience those things, is very, very important. So we'll have a lot of free trial memberships, to give out, so people can really come in and experience this stuff before they decide, oh, wow, that they want to commit. So yeah, I encourage everybody to come out at that time and get their feet wet and their hands dirty, so to speak.
All right, so kind of moving forward a little bit, I want to talk about some of the guys that you've kind of worked with in the past and kind of recently also. But you've trained guys in the NBA such as Andrew Wiggins and Miles Bridges, and as well as up and coming rookies Keldon Johnson from UK and Jon Elmore from Marshall. What has that experience been like for you, and how rewarding is it for you to kind of watch the success of both of those guys?
So as a strength and conditioning coach, when I'm wearing that hat, I think all of us can say, coaches can say that we live vicariously through our athletes, and how, our time spent in the gym, under blood, sweat, and, some tears on the training floor translates to their success onto the court or field or their respective sport. For me as a sports fan, and for me in particular as a basketball fan, the reason being, not because I'm a natural athlete, but because of my work ethic, and I think that's what makes me tie in so well to my strength and conditioning coaching. I was able to play collegiate basketball, so that's why I'm especially partial to basketball, sports performance, and strength and conditioning, and working with so many basketball-specific athletes. So to answer your question, when the day is done and I'm able to take my coach hat off and, put my T-shirt on of my respective team, and I say team not because I have favorite teams. My favorite teams are whoever my guys are playing for. I was a diehard Michael Jordan, Chicago Bulls fan when I was younger, but, since that era, I don't really have a team that, makes or breaks my day if they win or lose. I'm always cheering for whoever I can associate, with, and largely it's been a blessing, training these guys that, all of them are on some team. So about, on any given night, I can, flip through the channels and find one of my guys like, oh yeah, there he is, or there she is. So probably the most rewarding is to sit back and watch them do what they do, be a fan of them, and see all of their hard work translate onto the court or to the field or to their sport as they succeed in their competitive athleticism.
Yeah. So with Jon, he's always kind of been like an under the radar player, heading into the summer league, and he's always been a bit overlooked. So how much did he kind of carry that chip on his shoulder from the court to the weight room, and what type of goals did the two of you kind of come up with together?
Right. So I've just known Jon for a short period of time. So I've known who he is, and I've been a fan of his because of his success on the court and as a basketball fan. Was just recently introduced to Jon and began working with him towards the end of, right at the end of Marshall's season. They had a 6-month season where they started, I think, back at the end of last summer in July, going to the Bahamas, or August maybe it was, and playing all the way through the CIT tournament. So they had a super duper long season, and all those minutes and all the responsibility that Jon carried on his shoulders, to run that team and, really be the star and the lead singer of the band for their success, because he's so talented.
Right.
To his work ethic, is unparalleled. He steps in, he's 1,000% locked in and committed to the process. So work ethic is not something, that we can teach. We can kind of emphasize it or whatever, but you either come in and you're ready to work and lock in and commit to the process, and what you put into the process is what you're going to get out of it. So Jon is that guy, through and through. The improvements and I guess, so to speak, the angles that we took, exploring the corners, as we'll call it, that were new to him, was some of the attention to detail of the lifestyle modifications. So putting in the sports nutrition with it, managing stress levels and sleep, blue light exposure, some breathing techniques, restoration, keeping his body healthy and healed, as he goes through the rigors of, playing day in and day out and doing his off-season strength and conditioning. So it was all those missing components that he just hasn't had enough focus on or been educated on, that we were able to install to really put him over the top, that puts him, as a contender wherever he's at, one as an athlete, and then one, on the training floor as he goes through and improves his athleticism for his sport. So super cool to see him, making his strides towards the next level. You mentioned he flies under the radar. We all know who he is. He's one of the all-time GOATs of Marshall University history, but his goals are much higher than that. That's just a chapter in his book, and you're going to see a very, very thick book come out of him as he writes his next chapter currently. So super awesome to see him, on TV, being that fan, having had the opportunity to work with him. Amazing guy, super humble. You won't find anybody more humble or harder working than he is. And bottom line, he belongs. I've been around these guys and been around the talent long enough that I feel like I'm a good gauge of that. And he certainly belongs in an NBA uniform on the court with those guys as far as his talent level. And he's not peaked out. As much success as he's had at Marshall, he was called to do a lot, from distribute the ball to run the offense to scoring. His statistics, in NCAA history, speak for themselves. But a team is going to be very blessed to take a chance on Jon and to pick him up and to see what he's able to produce for them.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if any of the listeners caught the Celtics game the other night, but he had a couple of highlight plays on. I don't know if it made SportsCenter, but I know it was some of the top plays from the summer league, and he had a real nice oop. So I don't remember what the guy's name was, but the guy finished it reverse style, and it was a really good play. And those are the types of things that I think Jon is a little underrated in his passing and even on defense. While he may not be the best on ball defender, where he might lack maybe in some quickness and stuff like that, his hands and his basketball IQ kind of make up for that. And I don't know exactly where he ranks all time in steals in Marshall history, but I know he was really high up there, if not number one. But
because of his basketball IQ and his ability to work in between a rhythm, one as a ball handler and also as a defender, he's able to pick people, when they're not looking. And
exactly.
I remember several times watching the game myself and admiring, even before I met him, his ability to sneak around the back of somebody and pick them from behind, almost scrape the ball out of him from behind to get the steal, because he switched sides on somebody. Somebody thought he was on my left shoulder. All of a sudden now he's over here on my right shoulder. So, he's very crafty. He's very shifty. He's very crafty. And that's a nod to his IQ and his ability. So what he makes up for or what he lacks in his athleticism, as much as he peaks out his athleticism as he continues, strength and conditioning and sports performance training, over his career, eventually he's not going to be the greatest athlete on the court. He knows that, everybody knows that, but, through his skill and his craftiness, his basketball IQ, he more than makes up for what he lacks in any athleticism, deficiency.
Yeah, for sure. So, kind of talking about Keldon, he's been a little bit more in the spotlight, mainly due to being a highly rated recruit, and he was at a big time program at UK. So what was kind of his mentality when you guys began training, and how much different was his approach to Jon's, if any?
Well, so a little bit different experience that I had with each athlete. I was able to work with Jon on a one-on-one basis for our entire experience together. Continuing on, once he finishes summer league, I plan to see him back here once he returns home. With Keldon, I had Keldon as part of the Huntington Prep basketball team. So he was in a team setting. I was able to spend a lot of time with him. After he left Huntington Prep, he spent a year at Oak Hill Academy, and then ultimately went on to Kentucky. He and I stayed in touch. I loved, visiting him at Kentucky and seeing him play there. We go visit him and have some amazing seats and have that whole experience, seeing a top-rated team. And again, this is where I get to sit back and be a fan and, and cheer.
Yeah,
and nobody cheers harder for their guys than what I do. I go hard.
Yeah, I bet.
So it was a really super cool blessing, especially, with him going to Kentucky. He was the first athlete that I had to go to Kentucky. Several of them offered, but they'd go to different schools. The special thing about Kentucky is my wife and her family are diehard Go Big Blue UK fans, especially UK basketball. So it was really cool to share that experience with them, being lifelong UK fans, and them religiously watching Kentucky basketball on TV and then the tournament stuff. To not only take them to the games, but to take them down courtside and experience the game from the court, win the players' seats, and then to go back to the players' family and friends area, back. Equivalent, kind of backstage outside of the locker room and meet some of those guys and spend some time with them. So Keldon, 5-star recruit, out of high school, went to Kentucky, one and done. Great work ethic, super humble, awesome, intelligent kid. Nowhere near his potential and his skill or his athleticism yet, as good as he is. And, I expect him sky's the limit for him, as long as he continues to lock in and improve to reach his potential. So I can't say enough about Keldon and my time and experience with him, and how awesome he's been now that he's moved on into, staying in touch with me and kind of sharing that love back with me as a fan. So it's been super cool to stay in contact with him, to see him succeed at the NBA level now.
Yeah, man, that's really cool. So how often did your wife kind of come in and try to give those guys a recruiting pitch?
Oh, yeah, she's been great, man. I mean, so when Keldon's come over here to the house, and since he played for Kentucky, in between after he left Huntington Prep, or at least was in school there at Kentucky playing and stuff like that. It was super cool to see her light up and be able, it made me feel cool as well. Like, yeah, I got a Kentucky player, starter in here, Keldon. He's, one and done athlete, NBA draft. I mean, I knew that all that was going to happen for him. And so it was cool to see, her and my in-laws and all them kind of gush over Keldon a little bit.
Yeah.
So it was just cool to really kind of make a dream come through with for them being, and Keldon being cool and humble enough to come hang out over here at the house and stuff like that whenever you come to visit, and hit a little workout or a therapy session and stuff, and say hello and have dinner with us, or hang out and be a kid. Because a lot of those guys, especially the pop star athletes, they want to be kids too. Everybody looks at them, everybody's kind of starstruck and kind of gushes and things like that over them. So they just want to be in a normal atmosphere where they can sit back and play some video games and not be asked to take a picture or sign an autograph and stuff. And so Keldon was able to get that, back here at home and with us. So as cool as what we were, thinking it was for him, an athlete of that success level and stature, to be hanging out with us, man, we just made him feel right at home, and he's able to be himself and be normal and relax. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, man, that's super cool, and it's cool that you get to hang out with him and kind of give him that experience, and kind of the different aspect of it, because like you said, he's always been in that spotlight, kind of, and the cameras are always in his face, and he's always signing autographs. So sometimes it's cool for those guys to just sit back and be a kid, like you said, and just not have to really worry about anything for 5 minutes and just sit back and play some Xbox.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons. I mean, so going on a few years ago now, while Andrew Wiggins came from Canada. I mean, he was the second coming of basketball Jesus, in Toronto and Canada. But he would walk through, a shopping mall, or couldn't go anywhere in Toronto without getting mobbed, because, he was kind of touted coming out of high school as the next LeBron, and, still has all that potential and talent. I hope it continues to develop, because he's got the juice, man. But, coming out of high school with that stature, he was already, a huge celebrity, Canadian and in Toronto. So people ask, why would you go to Huntington, West Virginia, to Huntington Prep Academy, of all places? And it's because it's low key here. It's very family oriented. Well, at the time was low crime. But, at least the support group, closed in environment to where you could just focus on academics, focus on basketball and developing your skill, and play with some other 4- and 5-star elite kids in a competitive league. So it was just a good fit for him to isolate, not be hounded, because nobody, not many people, unless you followed prep basketball, knew who he was at the time, until it started getting inching closer to him, being a senior, and, all the coaches coming into the rec center from North Carolina to Duke and Kentucky, all the top programs. And like, oh, why are these coaches here? Who's that guy? Oh, they want him? Oh, he's the number one recruit in the nation? Oh, really? Okay. And so that word spreads fast, and then pretty soon, the bleachers and the railings are lined, watching preps practices and their games. But for Andrew to come in, these kids are celebrities before they even exit out of high school. I mean, Zion Williamson's a perfect example. I mean, he was a household name before he even left high school, right, because of his freak athleticism. So Andrew was kind of a start of really some of those high school graduating classes within recent history, to where people knew who they were before they even stepped on, a college court or to an NBA program. So it just works. But what we were able to give Andrew here was allow Andrew to be a kid, not, walk through the mall and get mobbed or whatever. So, and ultimately that's what they are. It's easy to kind of space out because of their athleticism and how high recruited they are. But sometimes you forget, and when I'm coaching, I'm seeing 6'6" and 6'8" and 6'10" and 7-footers sometimes, and in my mind when I'm coaching, I'm thinking I'm looking at a grown man. It's like, this kid is 17 years old, and I'm a huge advocate in coaching with positive reinforcement. But when I start barking, a few times that it's appropriate to do so, when I do start barking, I go in and I cut pretty hard, but then I have to pull out and be like, man, this is still a 17-year-old kid, not a grown man. So it's easy to forget that sometimes. And so point is, these kids got to have an opportunity to be kids because they're so chased after, and there's so much pressure on them to do these interviews and signings and appearances and stuff like that they just want to chill out and play PlayStation and Xbox also sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. So, Chris, another thing that I kind of wanted to ask you about was, how does the process work as far as, do you contact the athletes directly or do they contact you? And what message might you give them, if any, before you begin training?
So currently, I accept by referral. I get a lot of inquiries and messages and calls about training. One, it just depends on my availability and the type of training it is. Is it live training here locally? Is it, a camp or a workshop or somewhere that I need to plan and fly out to, for a series of 3 days, and I fly in, perform the camp or the workshop, and then I'm done? Or is it online virtual training? So a few different realms there that I got to consider. To answer your question, I largely just take personal training clients, live personal training clients, personal training including general fitness, personal training and individual athlete sports performance, largely by referral. So very blessed that all of my athletes are all high school, college recruited athletes in college or professional or Olympic level athletes. But to answer your question, mostly by referral now. I'm blessed to be able to do that. So I kind of maintain a waiting list. And as I have opportunities or time slots open up, then I kind of reach out to that waiting list. It's kind of first comes, first serve. But that waiting list largely, outside of some of my year-round adult general fitness clientele, are all, elite high-end athletes. Which is my biggest passion. That's not to knock, some of my general fitness clientele who may, be listening to this whenever they get that. They know how passionate I am with them, and I love each and every one of my clients and have a great relationship with all of them. So honored and blessed to have those guys. But they know that I'm at my best when I'm working with my sports performance guys.
So what kind of qualities or traits do kind of like your higher level clients possess, and what sets them apart from maybe like your average high school athlete?
Oh, wow. You'd have to, in answering that, you'd have to touch on work ethic and motivation and investing into the process and believing in yourself. And you probably even bigger than that is, I can kind of speak from my own experience. So that was kind of that, again, the kid that had the work ethic and the motivation and drive and put the time and effort in, but I just wasn't a natural athlete. And in high school, I didn't have a strength and conditioning program. I was not exposed, growing up in this area, exposed to any kind of, outside programming. So we played for Chesapeake High School and legendary Ohio coach Norm Pearson. We didn't touch the weight room. We conditioned. We ran and pressed and sprinted, and we weren't always the most talented team skill-wise, but we were always the most conditioned and the most disciplined and the best coached. And we all knew our role. And I knew my role was to be a shooter. So I'd spot up, and I wasn't the creator so much as I was a role player, and I was the 3-point threat, and I enjoyed a big run and gun offense. And I benefited and got my success based on the success of some of my other teammates to drive the ball and set me up. So I kind of had to rely on them. To get back to really the success and the difference between the two is it's got to come down to, a God-given touch of athleticism and the ability to develop that athleticism. So you could be a natural athlete, but you still have to have some sort of formal programming to continue to develop. I don't know if Michael Jordan had a strength and conditioning program in his high school, but he turned out all right once he got to college and beyond. And so and there's also a documentary that talks about him, the Detroit Pistons beating him down, and as he was trying to rise and get to the Detroit Pistons in the Eastern playoffs, and the bad boy Pistons just continue to beat the shit out of him. And he said, finally, man, I had to get bigger and stronger. So then, he hits the weight room. There's all, this kind of training montage of him doing some shoulder press and a bench press and stuff. And he's got some weightlifting gloves on. And, he shows up the next year and he's just, more physically impressive and stronger and more powerful. And they're trying to slam him to the ground, and he's now dunking on them. So he had to go through them ultimately to get to the championship. But two parts of that. God had to bless him with the potential to develop that additional strength and power and athleticism, as freak of an athlete as he already was. He had to develop it even more. So if he didn't have the work ethic, if he didn't have the, awareness to acknowledge the fact that he needed to get better and get back into the weight room and become bigger and stronger in order to compete with the Pistons, he had to be aware of himself, be humble enough and to admit that and be aware of it, and then have the work ethic to go in and make it happen. So two parts. One, you just have to, be blessed with that natural athleticism, but two, you have to have the work ethic and the discipline to develop it to its potential.
Kind of going off of that, do you have any stories that you'd like to share about maybe a particular player that you've worked with as far as their work ethic that really stuck out to you?
Yeah. I'd hate to single a lot of them out. Most of the guys you've never heard of, and it's largely a lot of those bench players that like myself, that they maximized. They were practice players and they took advantage of every opportunity in the weight room and in practice to get better. But even at the full investment of being fully engaged and committed to that training process and developing, it still wasn't good enough as, the best guy or the most talented guy, because there's the difference in, natural athleticism and skill development. Some people reach their potential. So I wasn't that star. So a particular player, I've had so many that have had great work ethics. And that's a buzzword. Just to be committed to the process. A lot of them are the guys you haven't heard of who've had the best work ethic. So there were the ones that, because they were gym rats and they had a work ethic, they were given the opportunity to maybe play collegiate basketball, but maybe didn't get all the playing time. Luke Thomas is right up there with them. He's will be sophomore this coming year for Marshall University basketball. JJ Mercer is another. He's playing at Ohio State. He'll be a freshman this year, playing Ohio State tennis. Standout tennis star from Huntington High. But man, there's been so many over the years that have had tremendous work ethics that have just, maximized their opportunity day in and day out, that, you never heard of them. But because they didn't succeed on the basketball court, they're going to succeed in life, either as business owners or entrepreneurs and stuff like that, and probably be, even more wealthy than some of the star athletes at that age. So it's really about developing character and about developing that work ethic and the attention to detail and dedication, and and really the integrity and the growth of mind and body into investing in the process, to going through the grind each and every day, and how it makes you mentally and physically stronger and able to withstand. So it's about the life lessons learned. So even if all that time and effort doesn't translate to your success on the court, is going to translate to their success in life. And that's the most important part, because not everybody's going to be, a college athlete. Not everybody, is going to be a professional athlete. And, those percentages dwindle, each level that you take. And that's okay. Those guys are the exceptions. And but that doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful in life. And that's why it's still super important that you show up each day ready to learn, ready to educate, ready to make yourself better in whatever the scenario is, whether it's in the classroom, in practice, or in the training facility.
Kind of moving on to some more recent news out of the NBA. I know that you're you're really passionate about basketball, and you love college, NBA, anything that's on the TV. But what were your kind of initial thoughts on Kawhi Leonard and Paul George going to the Clippers?
So Kawhi is, as quiet and as bashful as he plays to be, and everybody makes fun of him, his laugh, and he's just awkward and quirky and stuff like that. Dude is just, is savage behind the scenes. So he literally played the NBA recruiting, process and the free agency. He played to everybody, like a marionette. He was out there pulling everybody's strings. He made everybody sit out that was interested in him, Los Angeles Lakers included, sit out until the last day, knowing where he was going to go. And nobody knew. Jalen Rose was like, oh, he's going back to Toronto. I'm 99% sure. Everybody else was saying he's going to the Lakers. There was discussion about the Clippers, but it wasn't, people didn't talk about that. It was like either LA or Toronto.
Chris Broussard was saying that the Clippers were already out.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you caught episode 1 of this podcast, but last week, last Saturday night when I recorded episode 1, I had also predicted the same thing, that it was kind of a Lakers and Clippers battle going on for Kawhi's services. And I predicted that the Lakers would come out on top. And I think that might have been the case had the Clippers not made that deal with OKC to send Paul George to LA.
Right. It was just for the first time in maybe a long time, or maybe even the history of really modern day free agency, that one player, and you'd think that one player would be, like Kevin Durant. So he went down with the injury. LeBron James was planted where he was at. But then Kawhi Leonard, kind of out of nowhere. Not that because he's kind of that guy is flies a little bit under the radar as big of a superstar as he was prior to this offseason, this postseason before they won the championship. Now he's the guy because KD's hurt. LeBron's in LA, he came off his injury and stuff like that. So right now, him and Giannis are the guys. But you've never seen somebody just play the entire NBA like Kawhi did in this offseason free agency, drawing it out to the last minute, kind of sabotaging or cutting the Achilles heels of some of these teams who held out for him because he led them on to maybe think that he may be signing with them. And so he drug it out all the way to the end. And when he told them no, they didn't have any more time or any more, salary cap space to maybe sign a potential, alternate other superstar or star in place of him. So he drug it out to the last minute and really just kind of undercut the Lakers' ability to maybe sign another star because they were holding out for him. And I guess had reason to believe that he had a serious interest in going there. So not only did he choose his LA team, but he hurt the other LA team, the arch rival, within the same city, all in one big move. So yeah, man, it was crazy to see somebody like Kawhi, who's very, he's sponsored by New Balance. So
yeah, you got a dude out here killing other dudes in New Balances.
So yeah, and he's just savage it was really super impressive for him to keep himself and handle himself as professional as he does, and play the entire NBA like a fiddle, man. It was really super cool to see that, man. It was surgical. It was really so surgical on his part.
Yeah, so I'm a Lakers fan, and that night I stayed up probably until about 1:30 in the morning, and I was like, man, nothing's gonna happen. It's late. Like I'll wake up in the morning and maybe something will be announced. And I woke up the next morning and I had alerts just all over my phone saying Kawhi Leonard signs with the Clippers. Paul George traded to the Clippers. I'm just like, what happened? And all that went on at like 2 a.m. Eastern time. So 30 minutes after I go to sleep, all hell breaks loose. So,
but it's gonna. With Kevin Durant out, the Warriors, the dynasty at least down for a year. Because of Kevin Durant's departure and Klay Thompson rehabbing.
Right. Yeah.
It's cool to see the shift of power, kind of redistributed. The West is still going to be, super dominant, as it has been. But it's going to be an interesting year. I think the door is wide open. I just I saw the odds. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but I know the Clippers, we're at the top with the Lakers right behind them as far as the odds to win the championship this coming year. So
I think I saw it right before we came on the show, and I think that they were kind of co-favorites. I think the odds are about the same right now.
Yeah, they were real close, whatever they were. But I think that the Clippers look like they were in the number one spot. But I mean, just by who knows what. So at this point in time, man, it's a coin flip. I think Denver's going to have a really good year.
Denver's got a good squad too.
They have a great squad. I really like Denver. Travel to Denver a lot again for brute force and doing some tactical strength conditioning. So I'm looking forward to getting out there and seeing some of their games while I'm visiting. But yeah, man, when we talk about the NBA and we're talking about Kawhi or whatever, I mean, to answer that question, man, it was just surgical. I mean, he knew what he was doing, and everybody just really underestimated, his mastermind and how his ability to manipulate not just his own season, or his own career, but undercutting everybody else in the process for the next year or more, because they held out and were waiting on him. He drug it out to the last minute and kind of closed the door on the opportunity for them to sign other players because they were holding out for him. So, man, hats off to him, man. That was well orchestrated.
Yeah, I mean, hats off to the Clippers. Hats off to Jerry West and that front office for being able to get that deal done with Paul George to ultimately not only get Paul George but to bring Kawhi Leonard in. And I think they did give up quite a haul to get Paul George, but I think in the end it's going to be well worth it for them, in my opinion.
I'm just curious to see where Westbrook goes. It was funny because Westbrook's the lone standing member of that original Westbrook Durant and Harden squad. Which, I mean, imagine what they would be like if they were still together now. And so I think Harden left first, then Kevin Durant left, and then Paul George came in. Now he's gone, and so there's Westbrook. So I think it's time for him to move. Somebody's want to pick up his contract. I think he's got 4 years, like 117 million or something like that. I just saw left. So maybe him, and who are they talking about? Maybe going to the Heat also.
Well, the Heat got Jimmy Butler, so he's kind of already down there.
That's right. Yeah. Jimmy's already set.
So I think maybe Westbrook might be a viable option for them if Miami can put together a good enough package to send OKC. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see on that one.
But yeah, it'll be an interesting year now that the Lakers, or I'm sorry, the Warriors are kind of out of the discussion for true contention finally for a year. But yeah, it'll be interesting. But still, I mean, as big as a basketball, sports fan, and in particular basketball as I am, I still don't have a team. I have teams that I cheer for, but usually those are the teams of my guys that they're on. So I'm a Timberwolves fan. I'm a Charlotte Hornets fan. I'm a Spurs fan now. So it's fun to see all those guys distribute, play, and be part of that. So I got a bunch of different T-shirts and jerseys from a variety of different teams. So for whatever teams my guys are blessed to play for is who I'm cheering for.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of going off of what you were saying earlier about Kawhi kind of spurning some teams and whatnot, that one of the teams that were kind of hurt the most, and it was kind of unexpected, was the Lakers. And while some guys kind of did sign elsewhere and whatnot, the Lakers are still filling out a pretty nice roster at the moment. So what are kind of your initial opinions about the Lakers' current roster, and are you impressed with it, or are you still kind of iffy about what they're putting together?
I'm iffy with it only because I don't think the front office is really regrouped yet. I mean, they had the whole controversy with Magic Johnson and people. I think the front office and administration is what they need to get intact so that they formulate their mission statement and move forward on support with the players and how that translates. They got Danny Green. I think there's still another shooter short of being in true contention.
Yeah, so the Lakers have also added guys like Quinn Cook, Avery Bradley, Jared Dudley. I think what they're doing this year compared to last year is, one, obviously they're getting a little bit more shooting on the perimeter, which I think was definitely needed if you watched last year's team. But also I think they're getting better defenders. Quinn Cook and Avery Bradley are both really good on-ball defenders and can kind of take a little bit of pressure off of, maybe LeBron or whoever might have to step into that role also and guard some smaller guys. But I personally kind of like what the Lakers are doing, especially compared to last year. But I guess we'll have to just wait and see, and that's really all we can do at this point.
Yeah. The final pieces of the puzzle, for the next season haven't been placed yet. So they'll still make some additional moves as trades continue to happen. Now that free agency's over, they got some great pieces. Anytime that you place anybody around LeBron, remember LeBron took a B and C squad to the NBA Finals in Cleveland one year with Dellavedova as their second best player. So you never want to count him out from anything. So you throw AD into that mix, and you can put any other 3 guys around them. They're going to be contenders.
Exactly. I think you put LeBron and AD on the floor, and I think the rest just kind of figures itself out almost. So anytime you have 2 of the top 5 players in the league, I think that you're obviously in pretty good shape. So
yeah, absolutely. And those other guys that you mentioned, they added some role players. They're defensive minded. They're team guys. They're sound and disciplined in their style of play. Will buy into to the program and the style of play. So yeah, when you add those guys, those guys in particular, whatever, they're going to be there in the end. Especially when you pair them up with 2 superstars, all-time greats and future Hall of Famers like LeBron. So
sure.
AD will be charged up to be on a new team, be on the West Coast, be in LA of all places where the stars are brightest.
Exactly.
So yeah, to play at LA and be part of the West Coast, and that LA rivalry, that's going to be fun, man. It's going to be fun to live in LA and be a basketball fan and go there and watch, go to the same court and watch them change the court out depending on who's on.
Yeah, man, that's going to be really fun to see. And I've actually been to both a Lakers and Clippers game, like a day apart, and it's so crazy how different the atmosphere is from a Lakers game to a Clippers game. Like, because at a Lakers game you've got all the stars and they're just kind of laid back. You got Jack sitting courtside, just giving the other coaches and team hell. Like, it's really fun experience. So if anybody ever gets the chance to go out there and experience that, do so, because even if you're not a Lakers fan, because it is something special and it's kind of a once in a lifetime thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. My parents grew up as huge NASCAR fans, and I'm not a racing fan at all. But to go with them, with them to a NASCAR race, to hear the roar of the engines, it literally shakes your guts, shakes your soul. With the startup of the engines, and then once they're at max speed and they're whipping around the track, it almost takes the hair off your head. Any sporting event, whether it's horse racing or NASCAR or golf or whatever, to experience it in its live setting, even if you're not a fan of that sport per se or whatever, is worth the experience, because you're going to see some amazing things and amazing talent, witnessing it in person versus on television.
I've actually never been to a NASCAR race, but my grandparents go quite a bit and they love it, and good for them. I don't know if I'll ever get to one, but
well, yeah, man. To see that, and I'm not either. So to this day, but to go and see those fans and how passionate and excited they are, it rubs off on you, because then you're kind of hyped up and wanting to jump around and drink and yeah, woo, and and it's just it's an amazing atmosphere. So if nothing else, it's just the atmosphere, and then seeing those things, seeing and hearing and smelling and witnessing the competition, again, whether it's a race or soccer or whatever, depending on the sport and stuff like that. You can still, if you're a sports fan, you can still have an appreciation and enjoy it. It's worth going to.
Yeah, and I heard that you can actually bring your own cooler full of beer. Is that true?
I wasn't drinking at the time, but yeah, it seemed like everybody had a beer in their hand at the time that I was there.
Man, that's crazy. I wish they did that for like college football games or something. Just bring your own.
Yeah,
That's a little dangerous.
Yeah, but police may have a little hard time with that. And it's interesting. I mean, since you bring that up, it's an interesting topic to talk about, what schools and athletic programs allow sales of alcohol inside their stadiums or their arenas. Some do and some don't.
Yeah. So real quick, I mean, while we're talking about it, what's your opinion on that? Are you kind of for it, against it? How do you kind of view that?
Um, yeah, I mean, can't really say that I'm for or against. I'm not a big drinker myself, so it doesn't really affect um, my experience.
Right.
I think the absence. I guess I'll say this, and I say this being a bartender all through all through college, for 8 years. While I was in and out of school. I think the absence of alcohol doesn't offend anybody. I think when you start adding alcohol, there's always those, one or two people that could potentially ruin it for everybody else. And so because of them and because of safety issues and concerns like that, I would err to the side of not allowing it. And in college, especially in football games, tailgating, is an epic thing or whatever. So you're not going to prevent people from drinking inside, but, let them go out back outside and, have their drink and come back in. Just to, I guess, minimize anything. So if they can at least come in and enjoy the game and have some time or maybe even the entire game to sober up, from tailgating all day long, if that's possible to metabolize that alcohol that quick, then maybe they enjoy the game and don't cause any problems for anybody else. So anytime you're intoxicated, judgment's impaired, and again, those one or two people could ruin it for several others. But without allowing it inside arenas, especially I guess college athletics at least, if you're at a concert or you're at a professional sporting event or whatever, those are for adults. You can have an adult beverage, just like adult can have an adult beverage at a restaurant or a lounge or a bar or anywhere else.
Right.
So for professional, I think it's a little more appropriate for college, especially whenever you have underage students in attendance or whatever, just to minimize risk of anything happening. I think it's a little best left more appropriate for professional, not collegiate.
Yeah. So the way I kind of view it is like you said, it is, a college campus, maybe a different atmosphere at a game, maybe a little bit more family oriented. But the way I look at it is, there is tailgating going on and there's going to be people outside of the stadium drinking and whatnot. How many people are actually going into the game in order to get drunk? So there's a lot of people that might get drunk outside of the game, but there's also a large percentage of those that probably don't even make it into the game just because they're that wasted and whatnot. But I'm not one that is going to get drunk and act a fool at the game.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
I'm also, maybe I guess you could say, an advocate for it, just because I think it could bring a school like Marshall quite a bit of revenue, even if every other person in the stadium buys one beer, and that's not I don't think that's gonna ruin too many people's experience and whatnot. But I have been, where I sit at the Marshall games, I have been kind of exposed to some people that weren't handling it responsibly, and they run a pretty tight ship, at least where I sit. So security got a hold of the guy, and he was kicked out of the game and whatnot. But overall, I don't really see it being too much of an issue at college atmospheres. I think they're just going to have to maybe bring in a little bit more security just in case, but I think that it could be a good thing for college athletics.
Well, yeah, and that's a great point. I'd have to kind of agree with that point. And marking up the price point to, if a beer costs, $1.50, I mean, if that's the cost you're getting it out of, you're going to buy, a bottle or a can of Bud Light for, $8. So at those rates, price per beer, whether it's a can, a draft, or whatever, if you mark it up that high, it does generate revenue for that school or whatever, and it kind of deters. Well, I'm not going to go in and drink 6 beers, 8 beers, 10 beers at $8 or $10 a beer inside the stadium when I have it out in my trunk out in the parking lot or whatever. So yeah, by pushing those prices up just to kind of deter people. Okay, well I can afford $8 for a beer just to have a beer in my hand and watch the game live, in my seat. That's kind of the novelty of the experience. So it's worth it, the price of having one. You're not going to sit there and be bonging beers, on the sideline. So no, I can agree and appreciate that point absolutely, especially as it generates revenue.
Right. So, kind of in closing, I do this with all of my guests, and I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and it's kind of personal to you, and I hope you don't care to share this with us, but what is your all-time favorite moment as a fan or as a player?
As a player, I would have to say any game, high school basketball, playing for Norm Pearson. Not because it was high school, but it was just something special about playing for Norm Pearson at Chesapeake High School that, you would take a bullet for the man. And growing up, in middle school, and again, I didn't start playing basketball until I was, and entering my 8th grade year. It's only because my friends played basketball. They loved it. So, just to kind of share a common interest with them, I would be like the odd guy out. Like, Chris, we need you to play, man. We got 5 guys. We will play 3-on-3, so we need you to play. So, I would play with them. And ultimately, the 8th grade year was coming up, and I'd hit a growth spurt. So I was actually the big kid at that year because I'd hit puberty like way early. So I was like the tall, big kid for a minute. And so, like, Chris, we need some big guys, dude. Why don't you come out and play basketball this year? So I was like, but come on, man, it'd be easy. Just, when the ball comes off the rum, just grab it, throw it back out to us, and we'll do the rest of the work.
Or just put it in the basket.
Yeah. So I was that guy. But I was playing, that I put the ball in the basket once, and I really liked that feeling because I was like, ooh, ball and basket. Oh, wow. And because at that time I'd grown up in competitive martial arts. I was in karate and martial arts growing up my entire youth. But playing for Norm Pearson, ever since I played my 8th grade year, there was some I started to become familiar with the history of Chesapeake basketball and just the winning streak and the home dominance and the OVC dominance of Chesapeake had. As far as a basketball program and just how, epic he was of a coach. He's a Hall of Fame coach now and is still coaching. Most wins all time in Ohio high school basketball history. So, excuse me. So to play for him was a dream come true. And he would rip on you harder than anybody, but it was not only, he brought the best out in you because he forced you to work to achieve your best, the best you. And it's the life lessons that I absorbed from him also, knowing that I wasn't going to be, a great college basketball player. I maxed out, reaching, being able to play college basketball. It's never going to be an NBA or pro player or anything like that. But some of the life lessons that he taught me, which is some of the life lessons I like to think that I am instilling in some of my younger athletes and on the training floor and in the strength and conditioning weight room, that's going to carry over with them into their adult life and into their kids' life as they learn the importance of understanding the benefits of fitness and wellness and lifestyle and managing those things. So I guess more simply to answer your question, man, my high school career playing for Norm Pearson and playing for those fans at Chesapeake High School, because they just made you feel like like you're a legend, when you come out on the court, just the support of our community, and playing for Norm. And when you did something great and you won, the look on his face was like the most rewarding feeling ever. He didn't have to say anything. He'd just look at you and slap you real hard on the ass and say, "Great job, son." And that's, it made it all worth it. All those bruises and floor burns and tears, secretly in the locker room when he ripped your ass when you do something wrong and cut you down or whatever. It just made it all worth it when you'd win stuff off that court. And he kind of gave you that look of satisfaction and acceptance. And so that as a player, that was my favorite. As a fan, anytime that Michael Jordan would retire and unretire, that was probably my favorite as a fan. As a basketball fan. No, but beyond in more recent history, man. I mean, just to see my guys that I've been honored and blessed to work with succeed on the court, whether they start for their respective team and have their leading score and get the W of the game, or they get in and get some PT and playing time. I mean, either way on one end of the spectrum or the other. I mean, just for them to be on a team or to accomplish and be a number one draft pick or be an all-star or anything in between is awesome because I'm ultimately a fan of them because of the people they are, the work ethic and the time and sacrifice and commitment that they put in on the training floor with me.
So what would you say is kind of your most heartbreaking moment as a fan or as a player?
Stepping off the court for the last time, playing competitively in basketball, sucked. I mean, that was terrible. Because I really, really, even though I grew up and I thought I loved martial arts, my dad was a world-renowned martial arts instructor at a variety of different schools. And so I grew up and spent my days getting picked up from school and going to the martial arts studio, karate studio, and again, that was my everyday. So really thought I loved it at that time. Found out that I really liked it, but I really truly loved basketball. Slept with my ball. I wrote my name and wrote quotes and stuff on my ball with a magic marker and played every day. You couldn't get me out of the gym. So playing my last game of competitive basketball was a heartbreaker because I truly loved it. That's why I kind of I'm such huge fans of my guys because I can continue to live again through their success as basketball athletes.
Yeah, so like you said, you played for Chesapeake. There was a lot of great teams that came out of that program under Coach Norm Pearson. Whenever he left Chesapeake and went to Oak Hill, he ended up, I can't remember what season it was, maybe his second or so, but he ended up winning a state title at Oak Hill. And most recently at a fundraiser alumni basketball game, he kind of gave a speech and he dedicated that championship to every player that he's ever coached. And he said that wasn't just for his guys at Oak Hill or that community. That was for every player that he had ever coached and, every fan that had ever dedicated a second to Chesapeake basketball. And when he gave that speech, man, it really got to me, and I'm sure it got to you as well. Because I mean, he meant everything to Chesapeake basketball and basketball in Southern Ohio and the whole state of Ohio, and it was really heartfelt.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's more deserving of it than him. I mean, he's literally dedicated his entire professional coaching career to trying to achieve that, and he's my story. Everything that I mentioned about him. Literally, probably every athlete he's had that's had the opportunity to be coached by him can share that same takeaway, that same sentiment, there's some of those same stories from him. He just has the ability to bring out the best in everybody and do more than what you ever, realize, both competitively and at that level in athletics. And then, as those lessons are continue on into your adult life. So still looking back upon it now, yeah, it was an amazing speech. I was there for some of those games, a fundraiser for Anthony DeLimpo's son. Yeah, nobody more deserving, and that was super cool, to try and take that and share it with us. I was blessed to be a part of 4 years of teams where we went deep into the tournament, but we just kind of always fell short in the district. And just short, always a game short of going to Columbus and having a shot at it. So for him to have won that, gosh, it would be tragic, had he spent his entire career and had all that success, but not, won that championship, man. So nobody more deserving of that success than him.
Yeah, for sure. He's a legend, and congrats to him on finally getting that championship. And like he said, that one was for everybody that ever put on the purple and white.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's cool to still, every once in a while step back on that court and see Pearson's court, on the court
Yeah,
as
definitely.
it's still dubbed, and throw some shots up in that court and kind of reminisce and relive some of the high school glory days.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's cool to stay in contact with some of my old, high school teammates that are still here in the community. Chris Lovely has an amazing basketball skills academy going that he runs in the Chesapeake community still. A lot of those guys, it's cool to to touch base with and bump into and share some stories here and there again about everybody's got a Norm Pearson story that's really interesting to hear their personal encounters and experiences with him. And so maybe in another podcast we can get in to sharing some Norm Pearson stories.
Yeah, definitely. On episode 1, I had my brother share a few, and man, they were so funny, and I loved the support and the feedback that everybody gave me based on that episode, and that kind of seemed to be everybody's favorite part. So yeah, I'd be willing to dedicate a whole episode to getting guys that maybe played for Norm and sharing all their stories that they can recall.
Awesome, up to date. I'm there.
All right, man, sounds good. All right, so I just got one more question for you. What was kind of like your pregame ritual, like whether it be wearing your lucky underwear or maybe a favorite pregame meal? Can you just kind of touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so for basketball, both basketball and then later on, several years later, competitive weightlifting, I had this thing to where if so in basketball, how it started is, as a shooter, you go, every shooter goes through streaks where you're real super hot and everything you release is just money, and you know it's going in as soon as it leaves your hand. And sometimes you get slumps and you can't hit the broadside of a barn. So anytime I go into a cold streak, I would try to, I wouldn't do this every game. If I was hot, I wouldn't mess with anything. You didn't want to change anything if you were coming off a good game. But if I felt like I was in some sort of a cold streak, I would double knot my right shoe sometimes. And then there was a game that I did that it didn't work for me. So then I decided I was going to double knot my right shoe and put a penny in the bottom of it. And so ultimately, as I got into sports psychology later on as an adult, I realized it's just about taking the stress. It's just, it became a superstition. Yeah. Like I believed that there was something about it but the science behind it was it broke my concentration off of the previous game. It allowed me to let the previous game roll off my shoulders and look forward to the next game. And knowing that I was going into the next game with something different, it just kind of really broke my concentration of fixating on, oh man, the last game I couldn't hit anything. And it just really allowed me to, to really just look forward to knowing knowing my skill set, knowing my ability, and knowing the odds are my next shot is going in. That's how you got to be as a shooter's mentality. It's like,
right.
Man, I missed 9 in a row, but I almost guarantee it, my 10th was going in. And the next one after that's going in, the next one after that's going in. Because statistically, and that's why there's statistics, statistically, I know that I'm due, right?
Right.
So anything to, kind of break that concentration. But it became a little bit of a superstition then. But now I realize, as an adult, it was just allowing me to let that bad game roll off my shoulders and releasing any kind of pressure I felt on myself to perform the next game, because I knew my coaches and my teammates trusted me to do my job, which was the role of which I had, which was to be a knockdown shooter. So I trusted in my training, trusted in my ability, but my ability to not further stress or pressure myself because I had the memory of the bad game I was exiting out of affect the game I was entering into. It allowed me to look forward and not look over my shoulder at the bad game I was coming out of, so to speak.
Man, that's super interesting, and thanks for sharing that with me. It's always kind of good to get some personal tidbits about people, and especially things like that. Like I personally never had anything that I used to do superstitious like that, but I will say that I did have a favorite pregame meal, and that was always the KFC famous bowl.
Oh, so yeah.
It's basically like Thanksgiving in a bowl. So every time I was about to take the court, I was having Thanksgiving dinner.
No, I can dig that. Yeah. We always had, the traditional team spaghetti dinner. So it's not nothing super interesting about that. But I guess if I had it all over to do again, I'd probably hit a Chinese buffet.
Oh man. Yeah.
So Chinese food and Japanese food is kind of my fix. But you still, even with that, so depending on the buffet and depending on the chef and the part of town you're in or whatever, you gotta watch some of those Chinese buffets. So you never know what you're eating. So you could be, in the middle of the quarter or something. And like, man, I got to go to the bathroom. Check me out, coach. Give me a sub.
Yeah, I probably couldn't do the
See,
Chinese. That'd probably
so
tear
you
me
don't
up
want
a
to
little bit.
sabotage yourself. You got to be careful with some Asian cuisine. Sometimes it can sabotage you.
Yeah, for sure.
So now I think that KFC bowl is probably the safer bet.
Oh yeah, I never really had to worry about anything. I put all my trust in the Colonel, and he always came through for me. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man. Well, that's gonna wrap it up for this episode, and I really appreciate you coming on and let me take some of your time away from your business and from your family and whatnot. So.
Yeah, TJ, I appreciate you having me on Section 111, man. I look forward to coming back on sometime if you'll have me.
Yeah, definitely. Let's make it happen.
All right, brother. Well, I appreciate you.
All right, no problem. You take care.
God bless.
All right, so a lot of good stuff there from Chris Lane. I really appreciate him coming on and sharing his professional background and also his personal connections with some top-notch athletes. And, I'd love to get him on the show again. So due to time constraints, we're not going to get into our Q&A segment on this episode, but keep the questions coming, and I'll be sure to touch on those on episode 3, so stay tuned for that. And, as always, I hope that you all learned something. I hope that you gained some perspective, and most importantly, I hope you all were entertained. But thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Section 111 podcast.